This is Dental All-Stars, where we bring you the best in dentistry on marketing, management, and training. Here's your host, Alex Nottingham.
Welcome to Dental All-Stars. The title of this podcast is The Age of AI and How to Protect Yourself. Our guest is Dr. Lorne Lavine, and he's a digital dentist, a former periodontist turned cybersecurity, IT, and HIPAA expert for dental offices. Dr. Lavine lectures and educates globally to keep dentistry safe from all the various cyber threats. Please welcome Dr. Lavine.
Thank you, Alex. Pleasure to be back here. I'm looking forward to the present. I want to make sure we start this off on the right foot today. I was playing tennis on Saturday and I tore my calf muscle. This is probably one of the few times in your life that you may be able to beat me in tennis. So I thought if you wanted to fly out here for money, this would be a good chance for you. I can really only walk on one leg. So
you tore your calf muscle?
Yeah, I tore the medial head of my gastroc. Third time actually that I've done it. So
wow. Okay,
and
I'm struggling with the calf too.
Sport. I don't know if you knew that, but
it is. Well, I have a story once when I was in high school. I lost a match against a buddy of mine, and I threw the racket at the net. I missed the net and hit him in the knees. So contact, it can be, because I know you're Canadian, so
that's
true. You have to make a sport contact.
Listen, it's the oldest sport in the world, lacrosse. I mean, that's the national sport of Canada. So it is.
Oh,
yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, thank you. We'll set up a match. We'll both play with one leg, one calf. We could do it. So AI, you're the digital dentist, and I really was looking forward to talking about this subject, artificial intelligence. So it's ramping up very fast, and there's some really exciting things about it and some scary things about it. And I'd like to talk to you about AI. So starting with the benefits, what are some of the benefits with artificial intelligence? And even before that, define for us what AI is and what the benefits may or could be.
Yeah, I mean, it's what's interesting to me is I don't know what has triggered this quote unquote rapid growth. AI in dentistry has been around for a long time. I mean, one of my friends, Doug Yoon, who runs XDR, digital radiography, he was instrumental in developing the Logicon caries detector, which was back in the mid 90s. So we've actually had AI, for quite some time. What we're starting to see now is more and more kind of non-clinical, non-traditional use of AI. I mean, there's a lot of different definitions of AI. I think machine learning is another way. It's basically using something like computers to replicate what a human normally had to do in the past. So people use those terms like machine learning, AI interchangeably, but that's kind of my definition of it. Is usually it's software systems that are trained to function as a human would. So they're replacing what we as humans typically have had to do ourselves.
Okay, so AI has always been around, but it's been around for more than we may be aware of. I mean, there's what is it?
Chat GPT.
GBT. And you're saying, like, I wonder even if Google search is a form of AI or has been, right? Is that considered AI?
Yeah, I mean, the things that you can find on Chat GPT are typically have been part of Google for quite some time. I mean, Google, and Amazon, any shopping site, they look at your past history. Google will look at your past searches, other sites that you've been to, and it tailors the things that you see. It tailors the ads that you see. It all of that is part of it. It's learning what you're doing. Of course, the ones that are absolutely far and away the best at it, which is not necessarily a good thing, are social media companies. I mean, they are amazing at being able to, especially when it comes to teenagers, being able to tailor what they see and how they see it. And, that's the whole point, I think, of social media. That's what they're there for, is to target, what I consider to be somewhat vulnerable population, younger people. So, it's been around for quite some time, and people don't necessarily use the term AI, but it's absolutely part of a lot of industries.
Yeah, I think that puts me at ease because I use some of these programs, not Chat GPT, but an offshoot. There's so many of them, and I had them write articles, and it was pretty impressive what it was able to do. At first, I was kind of like scared, like, oh my goodness, look what it's doing. And afterwards, from my experience, it was kind of generic, and they didn't hit the exact mark, but it was helpful in starting the conversation. And you said you don't put out. I know you write a lot, and you never put out content full AI, but you said occasionally you use the tool for brainstorming. Tell me about that, where it might be useful.
So, for perfect example, I write a regular monthly column for DPR, a dental product report, and that's always fresh content. Always. Occasionally, I'll have other companies that contact me that say, "Hey, we want an article from you," and I don't want to just regurgitate something that I did in DPR. Besides the fact that I think it may be copyrighted, so I don't. But I also don't necessarily want to sit there and spend 2 or 3 hours writing a whole new article. So I did this a couple of times. I've gone into Chat GPT and said, write an article on this for 1,500 words, similar to the style of me, because I have so much of my content out there. And within about 30 seconds, there's a 1,500-word article on whatever topic I wanted. I had to go back and tweak it a bit and change some things around and, put my own spin on it. But I'd say 90 to 95% of the content of that is exactly what I would have put. And it was written in my style. It's scary. I mean, anyone, that's the downside. Is someone could say, this is an article from me. I wrote this. And it would, to me, if unless, of course, I know which articles I've written, but if I looked at something and someone said, "Hey, you wrote this 5 years ago. Does this look familiar?" I would look at it and say, "Yeah, that sounds like me." Even if I didn't necessarily remember writing it. So it's pretty scary what it can do. I use it at times, like my son's into IT as well. So if we want to write a program in a certain language, like C++ or something similar, we could go to Chat GPT and say, write a program in this language that can accomplish this. And,
Really?
in seconds, you have a programming that's, that
Wow.
normally you would need years of programming know-how to be able to write. It can do it for you on the fly. So it's pretty
So we're
impressive.
seeing and I like to get to the issues in a moment of AI, because right off the bat, we're identifying that some content creation and those that provide that can be not obsolete, but minimized. Some of that, the job force and even the programming there. Now, in dentistry specifically, where do you see AI being used? You touched on it earlier, but what are some areas that you see AI being used in dentistry?
Right. So the first, which I mentioned, was something like a Logicon, is diagnosis, being able to evaluate X-rays, cone beam, information, periodontal probing, whatever the case may be, and being able to diagnose. Kind of related to that would be things like decision making. Okay, we've done this diagnosis. How do we then go about deciding what needs to be done? Kind of an offshoot of that would be a treatment plan. We can literally come up with a treatment plan based on AI, based on, okay, if someone's got this number of pockets, or this pocket depth, or whatever the case is, this is the treatment that we're going to recommend, and we're going to do it in this order. That can be completely automated. Things like predicting treatment outcomes can certainly be done with AI as well. On a non-clinical basis, we're seeing something like scheduling. You could use AI for online scheduling based on the production numbers that you want and how you set it up. So there's a lot of things that it can do. What the things that I tend to focus on, the things that I'm seeing most as far as the development of AI in dentistry, is on the clinical part, on the diagnostic part, and the decision making, treatment planning, and treatment outcomes is all kind of related to what the AI is doing.
I would put you in the boat where, so I'm an attorney, and I also would put accountant in this realm, and I would put you in this realm. People that tend to see the problems, right? Because being an accountant, being an attorney, being the digital dentist in IT, like, what can go wrong, and being aware of that to help people make sure it doesn't happen,
Right. There's a
right?
lot that can go wrong.
And right, and that's what I like to get to, because I know you're a very nice guy and fun, and I wouldn't say you're a pessimist, but you see what happens, and you're trying to find the issues before they happen, because they're so catastrophic. when you aren't prepared. So, with that, in preparation, what are the issues with AI, specifically in dentistry? I mean, you can go both, like broadly, and then in dentistry, what's happening with AI, and where do we have to be careful and protect ourselves from?
Right. So, two things that jump out to me in dentistry specifically. The first, of course, is if we're using it as a diagnostic tool, just like with humans, you can misdiagnose. It's important to understand with AI, what it's doing is it's taking data that it's given, and it then incorporates that data. The more data that it has, the more accurate it can be. But it may not. For example, how do you train a software program to replace 20, 30, 40 years of clinical experience? I mean, there's always nuances in dentistry based on the patient. I mean, there may be decisions that need to be made based on their medical history, on their past dental history, on their finances, whatever, that are going to affect that. In IT, we have this old expression, garbage in, garbage out. So the AI is only as good as the data set that it's been fed in order to make its decision making. And until you've been able to put enough information in, there's always the chance of misdiagnosis, for example. The other big thing for me, of course, is you're sharing patient information. I mean, we live in an age where data security is a huge issue. HIPAA compliance is a big problem. We have no idea, these AI companies, Chat GPT, what does it do with that information? If we're giving it confidential information, is it secure? I mean, I think it's new enough that people really don't know how is it being used, and in what capacity. I think more just from a societal standpoint, uh, as with anything, anytime you automate someone's job functions, you eventually get to a point where you don't need that person. I mean, you're potentially looking at loss of jobs. I think the other thing, and this is more from from a society standpoint that I look at it anyways, would be, I think one of the goals in dentistry and in healthcare is that we want to increase access to everyone. The fact of the matter is that AI is probably going to be more related to people at a higher socio and economic level, because it's not going to be available to everyone. So right now, I think we have a big disparity between the haves and the have-nots in society when it comes to healthcare. I think AI potentially could exacerbate that. That you're going to have people in good areas and higher socioeconomic levels that have access to this AI, whereas people in lower socioeconomic areas may not have access to it, and it's just going to if we do get to a point where AI is better at humans than in diagnosing and decision making, then those people are at a disadvantage. So I think that's a potential concern as well.
Yeah, there's a whole slew of ethical issues when it comes to AI, and specifically in your realm of privacy, HIPAA, the as well as okay, starting with the first issue you raised in diagnosis, we can't say, oh well, the AI diagnosed this way. There's still a standard of care, and you're responsible regardless. You can't, I don't think saying I used machine learning as my diagnostic tool and it was wrong. So you're saying that still, as the dentist, you're responsible for making the final say.
Yeah, it's just a tool. It's no different than an X-ray or a perio probe, or whatever the case may be, a cone beam image. At the end of the day, the buck stops with you. And it's the same thing with HIPAA. We always talk about HIPAA, and there's so much that can go wrong with the practice, whether it's being hacked or ransomware, or their backup failed, or there's a lot of things that can go wrong. But a lot of us tend to use outside experts for those things to make our practices run. But the buck stops with you. I mean, you're the covered entity when it comes to HIPAA. You're the only one that's at the end of the day responsible for what goes on in your practice. So you're right. You can't turn around with AI and say, well, the software misdiagnosed it. From that standpoint, maybe we use AI as a preliminary diagnostic tool, but the dentist maybe should be the one that makes the final decision. You look through all of it before you start making your final decision. You don't rely on it. You just use it just like you would other tools in your practice to try to figure out what makes sense.
That makes sense. I think about just being careful that we don't get too lazy and rely on it where we miss something. It's like it looks like a real boy, but it's not. So just being careful.
Yeah.
Now, with respect to viruses, malware, ransomware, are they becoming like superbugs now because of AI? I mean, is like virus technology AI in a sense, and is it becoming
Yeah,
more
some
of a
people may be
issue?
using AI to develop the ransomware out there. A lot of the ransomware that we're seeing coming down the pike is what's called zero day. And that's basically a fancy way of saying that it's so brand new that your antivirus software, your firewall doesn't know what to do with it. I mean, all antivirus software works the same way, which is uses signatures, because a lot of these viruses have codes, kind of like DNA, where there's a little strip there that the software says, oh, yeah, this is what I saw in these other types of viruses. This must be a virus as well because it has a similar code. The new ones that are coming out are so new and so unique that your software just doesn't know what to do with it. And because of that, we still have clients on firewalls, antivirus software. What we've been pushing people towards over the last few years is something called application whitelisting, where we basically say if a program tries to run that hasn't already been pre-approved, it can't run. We won't let it run. We can let it through if it is actually a good program, but we're going to stop it in its tracks until we do that. So the other thing with ransomware, which is a big concern for me, is I see anything, we're now seeing what's called ransomware as a service, where in the past these different groups had to develop their own ransomware viruses, which obviously is very time consuming. So what's happening now is you've got some major players in the ransomware field that are creating the viruses. They're then selling it to other companies as a service to say, hey, you can use our ransomware, and whatever you collect, we're going to take 15% of that, 20% of that off the top. So you got all these people now who basically don't have the skills to develop ransomware, but they do have the skills to infiltrate networks. And they're saying, okay, well, we're gonna license your ransomware code, and we'll keep 80% of whatever we make. That's a good deal. No overhead. So it's really kind of very frightening to me what's going on. And there's no doubt that they are using tools like AI to help develop their viruses.
Well, now that I'm officially scared, and all of us listening are scared, the digital dentist, how can you help us, or what can we do to protect ourselves from, I know you have specific tools in your suite. What are tools that either you provide or that offices need to have to, certainly what stands out is the viruses and malware or anything else relating to this, AI or machine learning or
Yeah.
bugs that are out there? How can we protect ourselves?
So, and I mentioned a few of them already. The approach that we take is basically a three-pronged approach. Number one, it's the ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Making sure that you never get hit with these viruses in the first place is way easier and less costly than having to deal with it once it gets in. So we want to have, the approach I take is kind of like a filter that, you've got all this stuff, bad stuff coming in. And by the time anything does get through, you want it to be the very bottom of that filter, very thin little, dribble of stuff that they can get through. Your firewall is the number one way of dealing with malware that's coming in. We also want to make sure that all your software, because people always think that the way that viruses get in is by someone clicking an email attachment or some other way. It's actually probably one of the more common ways that viruses get in is through security holes in your software. All software has security holes in them, and these companies are constantly releasing patches. Oftentimes, the patches themselves have holes in them. You're kind of playing this game of whack-a-mole. That's part of the reason why one of the HIPAA rules is something called patch management, which is that it's a law. You have to keep your systems current and up to date. As I mentioned, firewalls, that type of, patching the software, it's not foolproof. Nothing you do is 100%. So stuff will get through. So then you have to deal with it. That's where, certainly having antivirus software, anti-ransomware software is going to be beneficial. And as I mentioned before, the application whitelisting, in my mind, is kind of like the final piece of the puzzle. That We've been installing application whitelisting for about 2.5 years for our clients. We have yet to see a single virus on any computer that has that software, which is not something I could have said beforehand. That being the case, no matter, even with all your best efforts, not everything, like I said, is 100%. And you need to have some good way to restore. And that's where backup, having a good solid backup is, in my mind, critical for any practice. So, it's just basically, it's just going through that protocol of doing everything you can to prevent it from ever getting in, making sure you've got the tools in place to deal with it. And if all else fails, being able to recover. That's kind of the approach that we would take for any office.
It makes sense. And for those that are listening, if we'd like to learn more about you and your services, what will we do? Where will we go?
The easiest way is to go to the website, which is www.thedigitalDentist.com. And there's a little form there where you can just, yes, you want a consultation. You put in your name, your phone number, your email. It comes to us. My office manager, Candace, will contact you. What we recommend for most offices is what we call it a technical audit or security audit. It's, the basic concept that any dentist would understand. You can't treatment plan until you diagnose first. I'm more than happy to talk to any office if they want to pick my brain. But for most people, they want to know their specific situation. What do I do? Do I have protection in place? What are things that I need to do for my individual practice to secure it? So what we normally charge for it for any of your listeners, if they call, if they go to the website or they call us, they can just mention that they heard the podcast and we'll waive the fee. So it's free. The process doesn't take that long. It takes maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes. We only need you for 5 or 10 minutes of that just to log us onto the systems. We gather the data, and then I would sit down with you afterwards and say, okay, here's what we found, and here's what I recommend, and here are the choices, and here's what the choices will cost, and here's what will happen if you choose choice A versus choice B. And the goal is to come up with a plan that's going to fit to what you want to do in your budget, and then we go from there. But you don't know what you've got in place or what you don't have in place until you actually look. And that's the problem, is that a lot of offices just haven't looked. So they don't know what's going on. And you don't want to find out the hard way. So the other option, if you want to call us up, we have a toll-free number, which is 866-204-3398. I think it's extension 200 for my office manager, Candace. And same deal. She'll schedule us a call. The other thing that I did is I know that there's some people out there who are a little bit shy, who may not want to talk right away or want to sort of get a feel for where they might be at. So I set up a separate website. It's called go.thedigitalDentist.com. And it's basically a security predictor checklist. It's like a 6 or 7 point checklist that's going to ask you these questions, and you'll get an immediate response as far as this is where you're at as far as the security in your practice. And if that then triggers you to go to the website or call us, that's great. And if not, you've got information that you didn't have 5 minutes before that. So that's
thank you, Lorne. I appreciate it so much. And I didn't mention in the beginning, we go back way back since the beginning of All Star Dental Academy. You've been a big supporter, and we really are so grateful for you and what you've done for dentistry. I mean, you just add a sense of security and safety, knowing that you're out there and you're providing and protecting people to keep them safe, and so they can just do more dentistry without unnecessary headaches. So thank you so much. And remember to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You get the episodes right as they are released. And please share with your friends. And until next time, go out there and be an all-star.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Dental All-Stars. Visit us online at allstardentalacademy.com.